Superheroes go through a lot of trouble for us regular Earth folk, and we have their thanks for that.
Thank you.
But sometimes their hard work ends up with a hero dying.
You didn't see that coming?
But thankfully, in the world of comics, death isn't permanent per se, and many popular characters have come back from certain doom before. For this list, we're going to count them down from both the comic book page as well as their big screen counterparts. Before we get started though, why not click on that subscribe button if you haven't already? That way you'll get the latest and greatest from CBR every day.
Can't. You'll die.
We are Groot.
Groot. If we were to ask most Marvel fans 5 years ago who Groot was, most wouldn't know who he or the Guardians of the Galaxy were.
I am Groot.
So what?
Unlike most of the characters in the MCU, the Guardians were an incredibly obscure team that originated back in the 1970s.
I am Groot.
In fact, Groot wasn't even part of the original lineup. He appeared as a villain initially back in 1960 in Tales to Astonish number 13. Groot joined up with Star-Lord and company when the Guardians got the reboot treatment, and eventually the ragtag space team made their way to the big screen. Despite having the star power of Vin Diesel attached to voice Groot, the Fast and the Furious actor only had to say one line over and over again, plus one variation. That variation actually came back when Groot sacrificed himself to save the team. Thanks to his durable wood-like body, he essentially cocooned the team from certain death, but at the cost of his own life. But Groot's death was short-lived, as baby Groot was born shortly after. His pal Rocket Raccoon put what was left of Groot, a stick, in a pot, and the rest is history.
I am Groot.
Uh-huh.
I'm Groot.
Baby Groot in turn charmed his way all over the film sequel in 2017.
You be as quiet as possible, or I'll put one in your lap first.
Party pooper. No cake for you.
Jason Todd. Jason Todd knows a thing or two about dying and coming back to life. Unlike most people on this list, however, he doesn't exactly come back as the same person he was before he died. Prior to death, Jason Todd was best known as Robin, the boy wonder next to Batman. But things got about as bad as it can get for Todd when the Joker took him out in the comic book arc Death in the Family. Batman took this pretty hard, often beating himself up over the incident.
I thought I'd be the last person you'd ever let him hurt.
We actually get a glimpse of this in Batman vs. Superman. But that wasn't the end of Todd. Thanks to comic book laws, timelines were rewritten, and Todd came back, but not as a straight-up hero this time around. He became Red Hood, a vigilante anti-hero who worked against and with Batman. Todd also came back in another timeline in the critically acclaimed game Arkham Knight. Spoiler alert for that game, but the titular knight in question was in fact Jason Todd. His backstory is similar to that of Death in the Families, but took on a different look and mission in the game. Which version do you prefer?
For as surely as night follows day, there comes a time when even gods must die.
Superman. Yeah, the big one. Superman has been one of the most popular and beloved superheroes of all time. He's been leaping over tall buildings in a single bound ever since 1938, when he made his comic strip debut. Since then, he's been in comics, graphic novels, animated shows, and films, and live action. Superman is one powerful dude, vulnerable only to kryptonite and magic, depending on who you ask, and is powered with some of the strongest moves in the entire genre. That's why it's so surprising when Superman died. In Batman vs. Superman and the comic story arc known as Death of Superman, which the film borrowed elements from, Superman meets his demise in the climactic battle against Doomsday.
Superman died as he lived, defending Metropolis.
But of course, this is Superman we're talking about here. Of course, he isn't actually dead. Superman eventually came back, and stronger than ever. In the comics, he was sporting longer hair for a while up until his marriage to Lois Lane. While we haven't seen him in any of the promotional material yet for Justice League, you can be sure that the Man of Steel is definitely making a return to the DCEU. Whether or not he's sporting the black Kryptonian suit remains to be seen, though.
I could destroy you with a single blast of my Omega beams.
You could. But that wouldn't stop the Hellspores, would it?
Batman. One of the most beloved characters ever, Batman has been celebrated across the globe for decades. He's one of the oldest superheroes around. As we all know by now, though, Batman doesn't have any superpowers, using his brain and his tech to give him an edge. So with that vulnerability comes risk. Batman's actually bit the dust quite a few times and has come back, but we'll focus on just a few for this list. First up is the last issue of the Final Crisis arc, where Batman finds himself captured by Darkseid, who wanted to clone Bats and make an evil clone army out of him. Batman actually broke his one rule and used a firearm against Darkseid, wounding him but not killing him.
They do not have the strength of character to destroy an entire planet. You, a human, you'd kill your own kind to win battles.
but he was also vaporized by the Omega Sanction blast in turn, leaving behind a charred corpse for Superman to find. But the Dark Knight, of course, didn't die. He was sent to another point in time while his body remained in the present. He was also turned into a literal time bomb, so things definitely got weird there. He eventually fights his way back to the present in Batman: Return of Bruce Wayne.
How is this possible? As I told you a long time ago, you're not the only one with gifts.
Professor X. Here's a character that's had the distinct pleasure of actually dying twice on screen. While one death may be very permanent, things aren't always what they seem in the comic book universe. Despite being an all-powerful psychic in the X-Men universe, Professor X is still vulnerable, and the character met his end both in the comics and in the polarizing film X-Men: The Last Stand. In that film, the Professor was actually killed on screen by his most beloved and talented student, Jean Grey, who had since become the terrifyingly powerful Dark Phoenix. In a display of extreme power, Jean essentially shatters the Professor with the help of her new psychic powers.
Charles Xavier did more for mutants than you'll ever know. The single greatest regret is that he had to die for our dream to live.
But as it turns out, the Professor didn't actually die. Most of us just didn't know this, as the reveal came in an after-credit scene in a time where we weren't expecting them.
Charles.
His return was made a lot clearer to us during the ending of the Wolverine, when the Professor reunites with Logan.
They cut you open, your heart stopped.
Tetrodotoxin B slows the pulse to 1 beat a minute.
Nick Fury. If there's one thing the MCU is known for, aside from the great action, great characters, and cohesive cinematic universe, of course, is that no one has really died on screen before. Sure, we've had a few moments like Quicksilver in Age of Ultron, and that one death in Guardians Volume 2 still has us teary-eyed.
He may have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy.
But the heroes are, for the most part, pretty untouchable. When the excellent Winter Soldier came out, fans were initially surprised that the film had the guts to kill off one of the central characters to the MCU, Samuel L. Jackson's portrayal of Nick Fury. Fury was a central character in the Captain America sequel, being the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. and juggling the shady nature of being super spy at the top of his game. During a chase sequence, the Winter Soldier manages to seriously injure Fury and quickly comes to Cap's apartment to finish the job with a sniper. We thought that it was for Fury and would have been impressed if they stuck with it, but Fury, as it turns out, faked his own death by bringing his heartbeat down so low that the machinery couldn't detect it. He may have been pronounced dead, but that super spy still had life in him.
There is no way you can succeed. You will die, Hal Jordan.
And I'll die trying.
Green Lantern. Despite all the flack that Hal Jordan and his alter ego, the Green Lantern, gets, he's one of the more powerful characters in the DC universe. With the power of imagination and his ring, he can literally think of anything he wants and apply it to combat or rescue. So it's safe to say he's a pretty important character in the Justice League.
Here we go, team. We got this!
That's why news of his death must have come as a great shock to those reading Green Lantern number 46. Hal Jordan was going up against Dr. Polaris, who had actually managed to render the Green Lantern power ring useless with the help of a magnetic field. Polaris then uses his powers and seemingly takes out Hal Jordan for good. Thankfully, comic books always find a way to bring back their most beloved heroes, and Hal Jordan was no exception. Thanks to the existence of time travel, Hal Jordan had previously visited the 58th century, who then sent Jordan back when the spark of life was identified, resulting in the future being sending Jordan back and giving us the issue titled Green Lantern Lives Again. Do you think time travel or the multiverse will play a role in the future DCEU films? Who should play the Green Lantern on the big screen anyway? Let us know.
The only explanation of Jean's survival is that her powers wrapped her in a cocoon of telekinetic energy.
Jean Grey. Jean Grey was one of the most powerful and beloved X-Men of her day. She was a favorite of Professor X and one of the original members of the team, going back as far as 1963 when the series debuted. We of course know her better as the Phoenix, a powerful mutant with some seriously next-level abilities. But all that power came at a cost. With the help of the Fantastic Four, Jean and the X-Men worked to defeat Xenox, who had kidnapped some key members of the X-Men. During their escape, Jean had to pilot their shuttle back to Earth in the middle of a solar storm. While the shuttle did protect the X-Men, Jean took the full brunt of the radiation from the storm and eventually succumbed to the damage. But she didn't die. In fact, she came back stronger than ever as the Phoenix with the help of the Phoenix Force. The Force actually replaced Jean, with the real one lying cocooned at the bottom of the bay, and the new version taking up the mantle of the Phoenix, who in turn became corrupted by the Hellfire Club and turned to the Dark Phoenix.
I am hideous?
You are horrifying to look at, yes. But that's a good thing.
Oh?
When you're ugly and someone loves you, you know they love you for who you are.
Mantis. Most people will be well acquainted with Mantis, now thanks to her awkward yet charming appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
You feel love?
No, I don't.
For her!
No, that is not...
But fans of the Marvel Comics will know that she's been around for much longer and has done plenty of awesome things. From being an Avenger to fighting them to crossing over to the DC Universe. She then died when joining up with the Guardians. Or did she? During the Marvel crossover event titled Secret Invasion, many of the Marvel heroes were in an all-out war against the Skrulls. Things didn't look good for the Guardians of the Galaxy, as the war turned ally against ally and the misfits from space definitely found themselves in a pinch. Then Magus seemingly killed off a few members of the Guardians, including Mantis in the War of Kingsark. Mantis, as it turns out, was Adam Warlock's future evil self, but he didn't actually kill them.
Sorry, I was trying to be useful.
A few issues later, it was revealed that the missing members were in fact alive, with the team being held in suspended animation. Does this mean Mantis might have a rough time in future Marvel films? Let us know what you think.
Whoa, I'm not you. You're dead, which makes me dead. No way, neither of us could be dead. That's impossible, Peter Parker. So you're not dead?
Spider-Man. Despite being one of the most beloved superheroes of all time, Spider-Man has actually died in the comic books. For this entry, we're focusing in on Peter Parker and his comic book death. In fact, the web-slinger has died quite a few times, but thankfully has always returned to the land of the living. We guess being one of the more popular heroes ever does come with its perks. One death actually came from a freak accident. Parker ended up sacrificing himself to save a mother and her daughter from a chemical spill, but the effects had a nasty and permanent effect on Parker. He then had an out-of-body battle with none other than Thanos. The two enter a battle of words and fists before Thanos' mistress, Death, enters the equation and actually takes Spidey's side, sending him back to the mortal world along with the little girl from the accident who was starting to enter this limbo realm.
Gotta say, that's awesome.
Peter's died a few other times, one being when Kraven the Hunter took him out and actually buried him underground, only to have him burst out from his own tomb in the black suit. He dies again in the Superior Spider-Man and again in the Clone Saga. Both again, we see him brought back to life.
That was awesome!
That's it for now, everyone. Which superhero do you think has died the most and come back? Should heroes remain dead, or are you glad when they come back? Should the films avoid bringing characters back just to stick with the original plan? Perhaps that will all change in Infinity War next year. Whatever you think, comment below and be sure to like and subscribe for more awesomely geeky content added to your playlist every day. Thanks for watching.